welcome to another episode of Morgantown Memories. Today we are on location during this pandemic at the Scotts Run Museum in Osage, West Virginia, to talk to creator and administrator of the museum, Mary Jane Coulter. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
It's good to have you here.
Please tell us about yourself.
Aside from being the director of the Scotts Run Museum, I'm a mother of one daughter, a grandmother of three grandchildren. I'm a sister to 5 surviving brothers. Prior to being the director of the Scotts Run Museum, I retired from the Mon County school system, 35 years. I had planned to travel after retiring. However, fate has a way of altering your schedule. And I ended up here in the museum, and that is something that I'm very happy with. And it has been quite an educational venture. I have lived in Scotts Run all of my life. However, I thought I knew everything about coal mining and the background of coal mining, but I have learned double that since opening the museum. People come from not only Mon County or the state of West Virginia, they come back to Scotts Run, to the museum, after hearing about it, and from California, Texas. I've had people come from all over the country and out of the country. These are people that grew up and went to school at Cass Junior High and Osage Junior High, and left to join the service or left to go to different industries across the country, the auto industry, the steel industry, and have retired and want to come back to their home place. And it's always really heartfelt when I see someone come in and they look at all of the artifacts that are here, and they're reminded of their childhood in Scotts Run and tell stories. That is a big part of this museum, is to come in and sit down and have coffee or something to eat and tell about growing about your childhood in Scotts Run. And it's very enlightening. In the 7 years that we have been here, I have really been happy with my stay here.
How about being the only girl growing up with 8 brothers?
The plus was being the only girl living in a coal camp. I was able to get in the number 2 tub first. But the negative was I have a memory of being the only girl at an 8th grade prom without a date. And then the boys would ask me to the prom due to being afraid of my brothers. So I think that kind of sums it up.
Did you play a lot of sports having all those brothers, or go fishing with them?
No, I was the cheerleader type, and I was a cheerleader at Osage Junior High.
How did your brothers treat you?
Possessive, and I think they had that coal mining mentality protective. They were too overly protective.
What do you remember about the people of Scotts Run and some of the events that happened here?
Well, I remember, I spent a lot of time with my best friend in growing up, and we rode bikes, and when we became teenagers, we always came downtown. We lived up on Osage Hill. And we would come downtown a lot, and there were lots of beer gardens in Osage at one time. And we not only spent a lot of time peeping through the windows in the beer gardens to see the adults make fools of themselves and make fun, but we spent a lot of time at the shack roller skating and going to the pool and dances at the shack. And we had the opportunity at that time, which I wish that was still open, for kids to have activities at the settlement house. We did go to the settlement house a lot, and after school, and the boys could go to the gym downstairs there and play basketball. And I remember being in plays at the Scottsburn Settlement House. But what I mainly remember about adults, if you got into any kind of mischief, you didn't need to, you had to worry about your mother finding out throughout the camp, because you couldn't get by with anything, because the other Coal Camp women always had a watchful eye for you, and their word was gospel. You didn't have your mother say, oh, that they were making something up on you. You had to worry about them just the same as you did with your mother.
What about your parents?
During my time of growing up, I spent 50% of my growing up years with Mary Jane Gusty, who was my namesake and was my mother's best friend. My mother was ill a lot, and what I think now, looking back on it, she probably suffered from bipolar, which wasn't, at that time, wasn't diagnosed. And so I spent a lot of time with with the Gusty family. And when I lived with them, it was an upper, well, middle class family. They had inside plumbing and hot water, hot running water, and lace curtains and parties and things like that. But then my mother was a single parent that lived on welfare at the time, so that it was two entirely different households. And like I mentioned before, the tin tub, and the only utility that we had was electricity and cold running water. But I learned skills from being in that house also: scrubbing, using a wringer washer, doing dishes, cooking on a coal stove like I have right here at one point in one of the coal camp houses. But those two hats prepared me for life, because I have had both hats on, and I do well. Well, I think I'm a worldly sort because of that kind of a background.
How about the coal industry back in that time? What was going on around here?
Well, at that time, I used to think that having a train come through the middle of town with coal dust flying everywhere was kind of neat. But as an adult, I realized the environmental toll that that played on people, even myself. I feel that my breathing was not only due to smoking for years. I haven't smoked for 21 years, but living in a coal camp. I think that brings a lot of health problems to the residents of all coal camps, really. But until the coal industry started faltering and the mines started moving out, we had throughout the years from the 30s, 40s, at one time there was 2 theaters here, 3 or 4 grocery stores, pawn shops, a jewelry store. It was quite a booming area for a lot of years during the coal mining boom. But when that started happening, well, in the 60s, not only the coal mining that was faltering, but especially the Osage was cut off, and the population diminished when the I-79 was built, and a lot of the houses were bought up, and it has become a sleeping town now. It went from a booming town that at one time, that was before I was born, but I hear stories here at the museum, there would be as high as 2,000 or 3,000 people on the streets in Osage shopping and going to the restaurants and the bars and mingling, and it's sad to see it now. I really feel sad when I look up and down the streets and I see the buildings, no longer see the buildings that used to be here and the people on the streets and the residents. It's no longer the town that was when I was a teenager, when I was growing up.
What prompted you to start the Scotts Run Museum?
After I retired, this is the 3rd museum. The first was up the street next to Al's repair shop and the empty lot that is now empty. And then it was moved to the community building over in the park area. And due to flooding and ongoing flooding, a lot of the artifacts were ruined, and going into the building and seeing all the artifacts that had been donated and had been ruined, and it was full of mold and mildew, I really got choked up about that, and I was preparing to turn this into a residential or a commercial rental, and I had a brainstorm that it could possibly be moved here, what artifacts could be salvaged and brought over here. And I gave the group an offer they couldn't refuse, free rent. So that's what happened. A lot of the artifacts was cleaned and brought in, and a lot of the stuff here is a collection of my brother Danny's. He was quite a history buff and quite an antique collector. Some of the stuff had survived the fire from my tea room and was also brought up, and so we have a museum now.
Who are some of the people that helped you along the way to keep the museum going?
WVU, E. Falk, Professor Falk, who teaches graphic design at WVU, has been phenomenal in helping us get where we are today with her students. Just about every semester she has her graphic design students do a project that will help the museum and street fairs and all of the you can look around here, all of the displays on the walls. Her students did the work, and the board members have been very instrumental in helping with the museum, and the County Commission helps with donating $1,000 every year to pay the electric bill. That's one thing I do insist on, that they have to have a fundraiser or come up with paying the electric and the water and small maintenance. Because if that wasn't done, we wouldn't make it. We are like a lot of nonprofits. We struggle and we depend on donations and fundraisers.
What are the hours of the museum?
Saturdays from 10 to 2. We have closed for a few weeks because of the COVID virus. And we have a lot of people that aren't coming because of that. The epidemic has really hurt our Saturday enrollment, and which is understandable, because a lot of the people that would come on Saturdays that was religious about coming, they're older and they have health problems. I'm just hoping to get back to where we were on Saturdays. There was times that we would have anywhere from 20 to 25 to 30 people come in on Saturdays, and I hope to regain that.
What are some of the prized possessions that you have here at the museum?
I really like the old coal cook stove, which is over there, and the coal mining hats and the coal buckets, and I don't think we have one back here, but over there we have it, the canary cage that the miners always talked about. They kept a canary in the mines, and also fed the rats, because when something happened to the canary, they knew that there was gas in the mines, and I have managed to get one of those donated, a fairly nice one.
And what else?
Oh, I especially like the old Ringer washer, and I can imagine a woman using that to do the laundry and the tubs that we have back there. And when I hear someone say the good old days, I can imagine that being a good old day. Having to wash clothes on a washboard, or an old wooden wringer like that you crank. We have quite a collection of coal mining history books that have been donated by Michael McKernan, who anytime he sees an estate sale, he's on a mission. He also taught in the school system at Morgantown High for years and just recently retired. And his mission in life, I think, is to go to estate sales and bring books on coal mining and all the history that I have here in the museum. And some of them I have read. I'm not sure if I'm going to get through all of them, but anyone could come in and read or check one of the books out. Bloodletting is one of my favorites, about the three major coal mining wars when they were unionizing the coal industry.
What do you see as the future for the museum?
Well, I'm certainly hoping that we can continue, and I hope to have, when this epidemic is over, to have the people that were loyal coming on Saturdays. I hope that they come back, because it took us a couple years prior to getting people to know about the museum and that we were here. One of the board members, Nancy Coulter, she asked me one time, she said, she always called, my name's Mary Jane, but she always calls me Mary. She said, Mary, why do you sit here? No one even comes in. And I said, well, I feel that if I'm consistent about those hours, 10 to 2, that if I'm not, someone will show up, they're not going to come back, and that's what people will end up saying. Well, you never know when they're there. They say they're there from 10 to 2, but they're not. But it took a couple years for people to start coming, and word of mouth and advertising different events, and when we would have the street fairs, and people would come in, and like I said, there has been as high as 35 people in here during the senior dinner. That's what we had also prior to the epidemic, was a 1-month senior dinner that was no longer being held at the Scotts Run Settlement House. And my brother David and Nancy, they were kind of upset because they were no longer having it. So we started having it here. It was a potluck. Everyone brought their own meal and to contribute, and I hope to recapture that. The epidemic has really put a damper on things. One more thing, the last artifact is a huge photo in the back room of miners being evicted because they were found to be union organizers in Liberty. It took place in Liberty. The photo was donated by Mike Caputo from the UMW office. Apparently that picture had hung there for many years, and they donated it to the museum. That is one of the prize photos. We have numerous of photos of Scotts Run when Eleanor Roosevelt came to visit what was then considered the most depressed area during the Depression. And she had photographers following her. I have a lot of those photos for people to see. I feel that is a big asset for the, all those photos are a big asset for the museum.
It really has been a pleasure being here today with you.
It's been a pleasure having you here, and I really want to thank the Morgantown Museum for the publicity. It's really appreciated.
And from all of us here at the Morgantown History Museum, we'll see you next time.